Not everything is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. That was the great James Baldwin. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are zooming in from. We gather tonight in the spirit of James Baldwin's words to face the moment we're living in, even if it won't change overnight, because the first step toward the change is the courage to confront what's in front of us, honestly, urgently, and together. And while we center our conversation in the present, we must also look to the past. Over 800 years ago, the Magna Carta was sealed. Now, I know when some of y'all hear Magna Carta, your mind goes to Jay-Z. And listen, that album had some bangers, but tonight we are talking about the original Magna Carta, the one written in 1215, not 2013. So I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings right now. But that document, that revolutionary document in its time declared that no one, let me say it again, no one, not even the King Jay-Z himself or King LeBron James, was above the law. And you know who we're talking about. That document, it laid the groundwork for modern democracy, what we call due process, and the fight for accountability that continues to this day. And the truth is, the real Holy Grail might be justice and equity for all, something that we're still reaching for. But here's the real truth. The real Holy Grail might just be justice. But here's the real truth. The promises of the Magna Carta and the principles of justice it represents are under assault. And I'm sure we can agree. But what's happening in the White House, in Congress, in courtrooms, and in the streets is shaking the very core of our democracy. You know, if you're like me, we're watching the erosion of the rights, the manipulation of systems, and the normalization of injustice. And it's not just political. Let me just be real clear. Come close. It is personal. We are tired. We are anxious. We are angry. We are grieving mentally, physically, emotionally. And I don't know about you, even financially. We are feeling the weight of this moment. That's why when Dr. Kaye Whitehead, a fierce truth teller, scholar, sister in the work, and my fitness sister, asked me to moderate tonight's conversation, I did not hesitate. Even though I could be watching what's going on in basketball, what's happening right here is important. And so I said yes. Who can say no to Dr. Kaye with all the amazing things that she's done? This moment requires thoughtful voices, intentional dialogue, and bold leadership. Now, for those of you all don't know, who in the heck is this dude opening up the session? I see you, Brother Al Green. Like, who is this? I'm Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields, come from the great city of Chicago, currently living in Baltimore, Maryland. And I studied, and I see some HBCU people in the chat. I studied political science at the great Grambling State University. Yes, the home of the winningest coach in football. We're not going to debate that. It's where I learned early on that policy isn't just about papers, it's about people. I've spent the last 2 decades traveling the country, working in schools, delivering keynotes at conferences, and showing up in spaces just like this one, talking about equity, mental health, justice, and the power of community. And one thing, if you don't know about me, I believe in real talk. I don't like small talk. I believe in deep listening. I believe in at the kind of laughter that keeps us from breaking. That's how I try to lead, with heart, with humor, and with hope. And tonight, I am so honored to share this amazing space with some of the dopest, boldest, beautiful minds and fierce hearts in this work. Who am I talking about? Dr. Kimberlé Crenshaw, a groundbreaking scholar. My man, Dr. Lester Spence, we shared the stage at Johns Hopkins. LaShawn Warren, a relentless advocate for civil rights. Melanie Campbell, a leading voice for Black women. Tanya House, a community organizer. Dr. Kevin Washington, who's doing some sacred, necessary work. And Coach Chauncey, who is passionate. You all may not know Coach Chauncey, but he's passionate about health, wellness, policies, and also happens to be the personal trainer for both Dr. Kaye and me. And so if you see Dr. Kaye and us standing tall and looking energized tonight, you know why. Our coach Chauncey keeps us in line. This is not just a panel. We have some other great people who are going to be joining us, the great Representative Al Green, who are going to be joining us, and some other people that Dr. Kaye is going to bring to the stage. But let me just tell you, this is not just a panel. I know most of us go to meetings on top of meetings on top of meetings, and there's no call to action. This is a call to action. This is a space to reflect, challenge, learn, and my favorite word, imagine. Imagine something better. And listen, we don't just want to have this conversation amongst the folks on stage. There's some people, I see the chat moving up and down. I see the shout outs that are taking place onto the side. I love it. And we want to hear from you too. We may be in the cameras on stages, but we know in your communities you're doing some amazing things. So please have your questions ready to drop them into the Q&A. Your voice matters. I need to, in Spanish, I say más despacio, por favor. I'm going to say it much slower. Your voice matters. Your perspective is indeed, and in this room, this was built for dialogue, not just monologue. But before we begin, I'd be remiss if I did not take a moment to introduce someone who has long been a pillar in this work. Dr. Sheila Fleming, the founder and the president of the Black Rose Foundation for Children and former president of the Association for the Study of African American Life and the History, ASALH, who's going to share some words. Her leadership and vision have helped lay the groundwork for conversations like this. This one and her presence tonight is both an honor and a gift. So let's hold the spirit of the Magna Carta close, not just as a historical artifact and not just reflecting on Jay-Z's album. We are clear on that, but as a living reminder that power must be held accountable and that we, the people, let me say it again, that we, the people, must always rise to defend justice. So welcome to the conversation. Let's get to work. And coming to the stage right now, Dr. Fleming, take us away.
Thank you. Thank you. In our so-called democracy, we are accustomed to giving the majority what they want rather than educate them to understand what is best for them. Carter G.
Hey,
Woodson.
Dr. Fleming, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear
me now?
We can hear you now.
Wonderful, wonderful. In our so-called democracy, we are accustomed to giving the majority what they want rather than educate them to understand what is best for them. Carter G. Woodson. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Mary McLeod Bethune. This is a gear-shifting moment. Gears shift when we choose to fight, when we choose to stand up, and when we choose to refuse to back down. The moral arc of the universe does not bend on its own toward justice. It bends because we push it and because we are willing to continue to do it until change does happen. Karsonya Kaye Whitehead. On behalf of thousands of members of ASALH, including our branches, our esteemed National President, Kaye Whitehead, American civil rights advocate and scholar of critical race theory, I welcome and greet you to this gear-shifting moment. I am former ASALH National President, founder and president of the Black Rose Foundation for Children, founded in the legacy of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. I am a reparationist, scholar, activist, provost and vice president of academic affairs at Rhode Island College. I am Sheila Fleming. You are here because we invited you to attend a new kind of virtual call to action. We have lamented too long. Too many times we have replayed the smoke screens led by our federal government. People, we have been here before. No, we have seen and experienced this atmosphere of uncertainty, portending 21st century forms of psychological oppression that seem to place us in a quandary. But today, that perplexity ends. In the words of our national president, tonight you have come to ASALH, a lighthouse that you do not notice until you need it. When boats are caught in a storm or fog, they look for the White House to help guide them safely to the shore. We have been standing as a lighthouse, proudly proclaiming the importance of Black history and helping people to understand that it is only through studying the quilted narrative of our historical journey, that once we can clearly see the silences, blind spots, hypocrisies, and distortions of American history. Welcome to the Lighthouse, that is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Welcome to your gear shifting moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila Fleming Hunter. I'm going to come on here. I'm Dr. Kaye Whitehead, the president of ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and I welcome you into this space. We have a program for you tonight, but it is not just about relitigating what has been happening in this country. I'm going to take liberty and just make the assumption that we are all aware that democracy is shifting. We are all aware that something different has to be done. We're all tired of talking about the problem, and we just want solutions. We understand that this is not tomorrow's work, but today's burden. We have to do something now. I called this national convening to give solutions. I'm calling it a Magna Carta, because we need to have specific steps of what to do individually and what we need to do collectively. For the past 74 days, 1,776 hours, and 106,560 minutes, we have been dealing with the reality that elections have severe consequences. 93 executive orders, over 62,530 layoffs, and 17 days of him golfing later, we are here. We are concerned. But we have to be clear that this damage, this plan of destruction, it did not start on J20. We have to go back to 1982 when the Heritage Foundation published a mandate for leadership, which helped to shape the policy framework for the Reagan administration. Reagan, like 47, fully embraced the plan and wrote 60% of the recommendations into public policy in his first year of office. What did that mean? It meant over 400,000 working families had their welfare benefits cut. It meant education affected 26 million students. It meant that the number of Americans classified as low income increased by 2.2 million, and the percentage of Black folks living in poverty rose to a staggering 34.2%, which is why when they talk about Reagan being a beacon of light, that's a light taking us into a tunnel, not a light taking us to something different. It was a war on the poor, on the environment, on Black folks, and education. Project 1982 is the grandfather of Project 2025. All you're seeing is the remnants of what happens when you pass the country over to people who don't care about you, who are not concerned about your well-being, and will crush you in order to stand up on your back. This is how they are prospering, and this is why at this moment we have to fight. Because the same people who prospered under Reagan, which is the rich, are the same people who are prospering now. But here's the lesson, and this is why Representative Al Green is with us. One of the lessons learned from Project 1982 is you have to move as quickly as possible. You got to destabilize. You got to create chaos. You got to sow confusion, doubt, and disbelief. You got to use threats of retaliation to make people feel so powerless that they simply give up and go along. This is how authoritarians win. This is how fascism stands. And if we want to hold the line, we have to understand two things very sadly. One is that it's probably not going to turn around in our lifetime. Y'all, we are planting seeds for trees that we will never sit under its shade. And two, we're doing the work now for the children of our children. As Coach Chauncey Whitehead said, when you break glass, you can pick up as many pieces as possible, but you won't get every single piece. They are breaking glass. We can take some type of joy in trying to pick up as many pieces as possible, but y'all, if we don't do something now, everything is going to be broken. That's what we're doing tonight. That's the Magna Carta. What can I do next? I'm joined now by Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas. He was first elected to the House in 2005. If nothing else, there's an Al Green moment in my head when dude picked up his cane, stood up when everybody else sat down, and said, you don't have the mandate. Representative Al Green, how are you, sir?
I am better than I deserve, and I have been greatly edified by all that I've heard. This really has given me a new incentive, and I thank you for allowing me to be with you. It is a preeminent privilege to be with you tonight. Thank you.
And we're excited to have you here. I know you've been putting together 6 steps from the conscious agenda.
Yes.
Talking about what people can do. And that's what I want to get into. What does it mean to have a conscious agenda? And what does it mean to push back? Because you have these 6 steps outlined for what people should do.
Well, thank you very much. The conscious agenda is our moral imperative. And I won't get into what the conscience is, but it is something that helps us to better understand our environment and to cause us to act. The moral imperative is something that we must do. So in this conscious agenda, there are certain things that we have to realize. The first is that we were not brought here to be enslaved temporarily. It was to be forever. You and I were to be in chains today, tonight. And we were brought here to be a permanent, identifiable, subservient, not class. Class is a socioeconomic circumstance. We were brought here to be a part of a caste, and it was a caste system. That's hereditary. You're born into a caste, you live your life in the caste, and you die in the caste. There were babies that were enslaved. When you understand this, and you understand that our ancestors suffered for some 246 years, nearly 250 years enslaved, to make America great. They planted the seeds, harvested the crops, had a hand in building the White House, had a hand in building the Capitol. They are the economic foundational mothers and fathers of this country, and we have to identify them as such. We need to tell people that our ancestors made America great. It's not great because other people decided they would write these magnificent documents, the Jeffersonian Independence Declaration, the Madisonian Constitution. No, it's great because you had 250 years of free labor. and that has to be acknowledged. So what I've tried to do is acknowledge our ancestors, but also move us forward in terms of how we should embrace what they have left us as a legacy, and then build on that so that we can have something for posterity to improve upon. The first thing that I contend we must do is do for our ancestors what was done for the Confederate soldiers in 1956. The Confederate soldiers were awarded a Congressional Gold Medal. These were the enslavers. If the enslavers can get a Congressional Gold Medal, surely the enslaved should have a Congressional Gold Medal as well. So I have legislation for the enslaved persons to receive a Congressional Gold Medal. But that's not enough. I want that, but that's not enough. We have to ourselves have a remembrance time. Juneteenth is wonderful. It's about the celebration of liberation. But we need to also have something to commemorate the enslaved and what they suffered to make America great. That is a Slavery Remembrance Day. We have passed in the House of Representatives legislation proclaiming August the 20th as Slavery Remembrance Day. August the 20th, because it was on August the 20th of 1619 that the first 20 or so, nobody knows the exact number, of persons of African ancestry were introduced into the colonies that later became the United States of America. Well, these people should be honored in a multiplicity of ways. One is for us to push, regardless of what anybody else does, we should honor Slavery Remembrance Day. And we
Okay.
should do so. I have a slavery remembrance program. We should do so with the program. We should do so by acknowledging them and who they were and what they did, and do this with alacrity. Do this in a commemorating, but also celebrating their lives. They were the people who made America great. I keep saying this because
Right.
sometimes the mnemonic device that you need is repetition. So this is my way of according you a mnemonic device by saying it again and again. These are important people and they must be recognized. So we have Slavery Remembrance Day, but now also have legislation for a Slavery Remembrance Month. For those of you who do not know, Mr. Schumer carried the legislation to make August Hip Hop Remembrance Month. Look,
Okay.
I'm not mad at him. Hip hop is okay with me. You know, I hip and hop a little bit. I just celebrated my 25th birthday for the third time. So, you know, I don't hip as much as I hop. So, but the point is, he did that, but we cannot get Slavery Remembrance Day through the Senate. So now we should push for this. Slavery Remembrance Day through the Senate and Slavery Remembrance Month. These are two things that ought to be acknowledged. We have Pearl Harbor Remembrance. We have 9/11 Remembrance. We have Holocaust Remembrance. And I celebrate, commemorate Holocaust Remembrance. I remember the Holocaust. I think it was a legitimate thing for us to do to commemorate it. But I also think that we should commemorate slavery in a similar fashion. There's nothing like the Holocaust, and there's nothing like the enslavement of millions of persons for centuries, and do all of the things that happen in the course of doing this: rape, murder, robbery, all of these things. So my point is, we need the Slavery Remembrance Month legislation. Now, here's what's going to blow your minds. There are people of African ancestry who won't sign on to this legislation.
Oh, yes, I'm not surprised.
Well,
I'm not surprised.
I'm still hurt because I would hope that we progressed enough where we put our names, find something that commemorates our ancestors. Those things. Now
let me ask you a question, Representative Green, because we're going to make sure that everyone receives a copy of the Conscious Agenda, our moral imperative. I appreciate that.
May I make one additional point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One more, because these are two things that I said 1 point, two things. But we need, if you're a reparationist, then you probably need what I call a means by which we can effect reparations.
Yes.
And that is if you look at the Conscious Agenda,
you
will see a Department of Reconciliation is number 5. Now, this is important. This is not antithetical to having a commission. No, but just as we have a Department of Commerce, a Department of Labor, we need a Department of Reconciliation to reconcile, not just for us, by the way. The Trail of Tears hasn't been properly reconciled. The internment of Japanese Americans hasn't been properly reconciled. We need it with a Secretary of Reconciliation who will make it his or her business, make it their business to, on a daily basis, do all that you can to bring about this reconciliation. And it has been, as has been indicated, it's not going to happen overnight. We're laying the foundation for posterity to move forward. They'll take it to another level. We'll bring it as far as we can. And I would just mention 2 more quick things. Please let me just do these 2 quick ones. Okay, these 2 quick ones. The Richard Russell Office Building is a stain. A stain on the Senate of the United States of America. I don't just say these things when I'm with people of color. I say these things on national TV. I'm a liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, unafraid, censured, but not silenced. We have to get Richard Russell's name off of that building. Richard Russell was a co-author of the Southern Manifesto. He fought anti-lynching legislation. He fought civil rights legislation. He was a self-proclaimed white supremacist. How can we allow his name to be on this building? If his name was remotely associated with the Third Reich, it'd be off. And we have to demand the same thing that our Jewish brothers and sisters would demand if his name were associated with something that was associated with the Holocaust. Now, having said all of those things, the final one is I sat as the chairperson of the Financial Services Oversight Committee. And we brought in the big banks and the big insurance companies. And we found that they contributed to enslavement by and through their predecessor institutions. Well, they have to atone. There has to be some atonement for what they did. And that atonement can be partially achieved with the number 4, which is the enacting of the Securities and Exchange Atonement Act. There's more to be said about things that I have done and can do, but
Yes.
I welcome your questions. And thank you
Okay.
for allowing me to get that.
Oh, no problem.
Yes. Okay.
I
Thank you.
appreciate. I only have one other question for you,
Okay.
sir, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. As we're moving forward and we're thinking about what is happening in Washington, we, as you are, we're watching what is taking place. What is something that you would suggest as we're putting together our Magna Carta, in addition to the conscious agenda here, what is something that people can do on the ground as we watch all the moves that are being made by 47 and 47.1 is what I call Elon Musk?
Yes. Well, thank you for that. And I agree with you. We need to start immediately, if not sooner. And I think that there are several things. I'll just mention. One, I think that you should have a report card. And I think that your report card is something that should be circulated among members of Congress. And you can tell us when you're scoring certain things that are happening. We take seriously people who score us. The NAACP scores. And I don't know whether you're scoring. If you're already scoring, then we'll just ask you to continue with that, because you're right. These are seminal moments in time that we're confronting. These are moments in time that will impact the rest of time. So a scorecard. I also think that you should use your eloquence, your right opinion papers to shape opinions and publish them. I have published full-page ads in the Houston Chronicle and in Black newspapers. I've spent around roughly $80,000 on these ads just to let people know what my opinion is. And give you an example, why I will not be voting to send any more money to Israel. Okay, it's out there. I don't run from my positions, and I'm not trying to be anybody's leader. I think the best sermon is the one you can see. So I do things, and if you think it's a good example, then you do as I do. But if you don't, then you do what your conscience dictates. I do what mine dictates. So I've submitted full-page ads, and I think that we don't write enough and publish it so that the public can see it. Pay for what you send so that you don't have to worry about anybody editing it. Buy the full-page ads. They cost, but we've got to put our coins together, our pennies, nickels, and dimes, and publish these public opinions so that we can shape public opinion. I also think that we can have marches and protests. I believe in it. John Lewis and I were good friends. We went to jail together protesting. I think that you have to remember that when you protest, as John said, you get in the way, there are going to be consequences. So you have to be prepared to suffer the consequences. That doesn't mean you have to like them. That doesn't mean that you can't protest the consequences, but you have to be prepared to suffer them. And if you're not prepared to suffer the consequences, then perhaps you should not get involved in the peaceful protest. Anybody that's not peacefully protesting, immediately denounce them. Say that that person's not with us. You don't want them to contaminate the protest movement. And you have to realize, and we all should realize, that what President Trump does is this. He uses incivility to take advantage of our civility.
Yes.
He called members of Congress lunatics on national TV at the joint session of Congress. Lunatics. He's not reprimanded. He's not censured. He will do this with impunity. Well, we have to use incivility too. There comes a time when you have to fight fire with fire. It's called a backfire. You have to have a backfire. But he uses his incivility to put people down. We will use our incivility to lift people up. Using incivility is really called protestation. We have to protest. We have to protest, and we have to do it loudly. If the courts can't control him, and if he ignores them, and the House won't control him, then we the people can. We the people, in order to have a more perfect union, to have domestic tranquility, to have justice, we the people have the last word. And our last word is our voice that we can elevate by uniting and moving forward together in the streets of life. The sweets of life, great. A lot of people dwell there. But the streets of life, where the changes will take place. So those are some of the things that we can.
I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas. Thank you for your time, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for joining Onto the Black History. We do that,
Yes.
jointly, as you know. Thank
Yes.
you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All
And
right.
for folks who didn't know, ASALH and Representative Al Green, we jointly put in the documentation for Black History Month. He is steadily uplifting the work that ASALH is doing, standing with us on the work of our founders. Thank you so much. So I want to go now as we're moving the program along here. Before we go to our panel, I want to show you this video that was prepared by the African American Policy Forum that sets the stage for what we're going to talk about, and then I'll be joined by our panelists. I'm very excited about you seeing this and taking a look at it.
In America, democracy has never been a given, and whatever has brought us closer to that goal has only happened thanks to the committed efforts of courageous Black activists and their allies. From the abolition struggle to the Voting Rights Act and beyond, people have put their lives on the line to make this country live up to its promises. But since the inauguration of Trump 2.0, we've witnessed a staggering assault on those accomplishments and the entire infrastructure of civil rights. What began in Trump's first term as an attack on critical race theory has metastasized, predictably, into an assault on any attempt to promote diversity, equity, or inclusion in any American institution, public or private, school, government, or company. Within the first few days, the White House issued executive orders banning DEI in government, threatening to sue companies or colleges still practicing it, firing government workers who were merely believed to be associated with it, and promising to end funding for schools that teach students about systemic racism. Within weeks, the Department of Education had already set up a snitch line for parents or students to report any efforts to discuss race or gender identity in schools, while the department's new director suggested schools teaching Black history courses might be defunded. Then the Department of Defense announced it was banning the celebration of Black History Month and taking down posters of Martin Luther King at schools on military bases, while the Defense Intelligence Agency began removing or covering up pieces in their museum featuring non-white male subjects. Meanwhile, thousands of pages concerning race and gender equity began to disappear from government websites. And even when pages have remained up, unacceptable words have been excised. Words like dignity or respect. But it's not just words being removed. It's people being terminated from their jobs, like Charles Q. Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Not for misconduct or incompetence, but because he made a 4-minute video after the killing of George Floyd, where he discussed his experiences with racism as a Black man. Meanwhile, Elon Musk has been encouraging the president to consider pardoning Derek Chauvin, the officer who murdered George Floyd, for the federal crimes for which he was convicted, and convincing him to create a special program to expedite U.S. citizenship for white South Africans still upset about the fall of apartheid. Of course, as all this is happening, the president continues to blame people of color and women for virtually anything that goes wrong in America, from aviation tragedies to the Los Angeles area wildfires. The anti-Blackness at the heart of all of this seems hard to deny. Or is it? Because sadly, the only thing Democrats seem to regret about their 2024 presidential campaign is the rare occasion when they spoke out against vicious racist attacks.
I think I would have taken back getting myself sucked into the conversation around what was happening in Springfield, Ohio.
Indeed, the Democrats want to talk about everything but racism in their response to Trump. And many have gone on record blaming identity politics or wokeness for their party's loss. And so Democrats talk about Elon and the broligarchs, the disrespect for the separation of powers, and the threat that the president may disregard the courts if they cross him. But as for the white male rage driving so much of this chaos, almost nothing. And where does this complicity and silence lead us? To a society where white supremacy is normalized. Already we can see this happening. In 2017, President Trump was forced to at least fake concern about the Nazi march in Charlottesville. And when he suggested that there were good people on both sides there, he faced massive pushback. But now, overt racists whose views mirror those of the Nazis in Charlottesville are being given positions in the administration. like Darren Beatty, the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, who said as recently as last October that, quote, competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. Far from an academic matter, all this racial hostility has life or death consequences. By banning government research related to racial equity, the administration would set back important work on reducing disparities in healthcare outcomes. Already, hundreds of civil servants working on health equity have been terminated, harming not only the families of those fired, but the important work they've been doing for years. Likewise, by terminating all government employees working on environmental justice to ensure that communities of color are not disproportionately harmed by pollutants, the administration will guarantee the poisoning of thousands of people in places like Cancer Alley in Louisiana. The perilous descent of our democracy requires us to call a thing what it is. Simply put, racism is being used to unravel the last 70 years of progress we have made in creating a more equitable society. And being afraid to name this, or suggesting that we should blame those who are calling it out rather than those who are weaponizing it, will only hasten the destruction. We cannot build a progressive, multiracial democracy by leaving racial justice by the wayside. We have to fight like all of our lives depend on it, because they do.
Thank you so much. That was created and produced by the African American Policy Forum. I want to send a word of thank you for letting me bring that into this space. We are going into our discussion, and I'm starting with Professor Kimberlé Crenshaw, the Executive Director of the African American Policy Forum, to whom the video is credited to, and Professor of Law at Columbia and UCLA. Professor Crenshaw, thank you for joining us.
Dr. Kaye, what an honor and what a pleasure it is to join you, especially to hear Representative Al Green. I am just delighted to be part of this conversation.
So happy to have you. We're also joined by Dr. Lester Spence, a political science professor at Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Spence, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're also joined by Melanie Campbell, who's the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. How are you, Melanie?
Great. Just honored to be here, just listening in, sucking it all in. It's been great.
And then finally, we're going to be joined by Tanya Chloe House, who's the former Assistant Secretary, Department of Education under the Obama administration. Tanya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Dr. Kaye.
Absolutely. So we're going to do this in 2 rounds, and we're going to lay out how we got here. From the different lenses, and then we're going to talk about solutions. We know that Representative Al Green gave us 3 solutions, and folks, we're going to add to that Magna Carta and then release it at the end. So we're doing it in real time, which makes me very excited and a little bit nervous. So Professor Crenshaw, let me start with you. The video from your organization makes it clear that we need to frame what is happening in this country through a lens of anti-Blackness. Can you talk a bit about this and why this framing is key to helping us to understand this moment and move beyond it?
Well, Dr. Kaye, you know, one of the things that is so shocking about this moment is how predictable it is, how much of a repetition of history it is, and yet how unprepared and ill-equipped our allies are, our media are, our institutions are to grapple with it. We have started to think about how to frame the crises, not just in terms of the MAGA nation's assault on our democracy, but the failure of our allies to be able to speak to that assault, in part because of the failure to take up anti-Black racism as an essential part of the DNA of this country. So you saw how our vice presidential nominee regretted one thing. And the one thing he regretted was his momentary reflection on anti-Black racism. And if we extend what we saw in that video across the political terrain, you'll see again and again and again numerous constituencies being called forth, numerous isms being talked about, but you'll see a huge absence around anti-Black racism. That's not just a problem of our history and our material reality being excluded from the current crises. But it's also a failure to deal with the way that anti-Black racism, as my friend Alvin Stark says, is a gateway drug towards American autocracy, a gateway drug. Or to go back even further to Langston Hughes, you do not have to tell Negroes what fascism is. We know what it is. That's what racial tyranny has always been. So we know that anti-Black racism has always been the vehicle, not just for the suppression of us, but clearly we are a primary target. But through the targeting of anti-Blackness, we have seen how our democracy was brought to the brink of destruction before and was saved because of Black people who, first of all, refused to work to support the Southern War effort, and Black people who fought and laid their lives down. That history is the history of our possibility. That history is what makes this democracy what it is. That history is the history that's been erased first by the daughters of the Confederacy, and now by MAGA and the contemporary version of that. If anyone is surprised now about what has happened, if anyone is surprised about the destruction of public education, the destruction of the bureaucracy, the destruction of the civil rights infrastructure, the destruction of our basic rights, if anyone is surprised about how quickly it happened and how absolutely it happened, it just meant that we were not paying attention to our own history, because we have seen this before. We have talked about it for the last 4 years. And I'll be honest with you, Dr. Kaye, it's not just people who don't look like us who refused to see the handwriting on the wall, who thought, well, if we pivot away from critical race theory, if we pivot away from intersectionality, we pivot away from structural racism 1619, we'll just rename it something else. We'll call it something else, and we'll still be able to teach Black history. Anyone who jumped on that bandwagon, this is the consequence. So the reason we created the video, Dr. Kaye, was basically to create the receipts, because it's there to see if we just open our eyes to it, and it makes it abundantly clear. We cannot save anti-racism without fighting for the democracy, and we cannot fight and save the democracy without fighting for anti-racism. The two in this country are one and the same, and we lose both of them if we don't attend to their intersections.
Thank you so much, Professor Crenshaw. I'm going to come to you, Professor Spence, because on my radio show today with Dr. Kaye, you said that the anger and frustration that we're feeling at this moment, it cannot be held by individuals. It must be held by organizations and institutions. But what are we supposed to do when we witness our institutions like Columbia or Harvard capitulate? Like if the big universities whose endowment in some cases is more than the GDP of a small country, if they can't hold the line, how are you expecting the rest of us, smaller universities and individuals, to do so?
So I'm going to be quick because I can go long. So the reason that I made that argument is because for the last approximately 30 years, a number of us, though not all of us, have focused on speaking truth to power, and then we've articulated all these ways in which heroic action can actually change the course of American history. Authoritarian regimes respond really, really quickly to attempts to speak truth to power, and they respond very quickly to individuals who are trying to be heroic, and they usually respond quickly by disappearing that individual. And in instances worse. So that's why I said it. What we need to do, even in instances, I'm at Johns Hopkins University, I'm the longest tenured Black faculty member currently there. Even in instances where we think our own universities or our own institutions are actually threatening to toe the line, what we still have to do is work collectively to get our institutions and representatives to hold these institutions accountable. That's what we have to do. There is no, if you're looking for individual acts of courage, if you are calling for individual acts of courage, you're doing it wrong.
Thank you so much, Professor Spence. Melanie, I want to bring you into this as you've been involved in this work for the past 30 years. I'm thinking about your recent work as the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. You mentioned at our national convening in New York a couple of days ago, you said, look, this is not the time for Black women to be out there on the front line. You said, look, we didn't do this. So those who did it need to really be out there in the streets so they can fix it. Can you talk a bit about the incredible frustration and anger and angst and terror that Black women and Black folks are feeling right now, and what we can do about it?
Well, thank you, Dr. Kaye and Dr. Crenshaw and everyone, Lester, and of course, Tanya. I want to clarify my point to my white sisters and brothers, for that matter, those who were there, is that what has historically happened is that people expect for us to get out there and put our bodies on the line, and suffer those consequences. In this moment that we find ourselves in, I really sincerely recommend that white folks do that, because what's happened in this since this election, this we're close to, we say 87 days, it feels like 2 years.
4 years, it does.
Is that we didn't get this country in this mess. But folks voted thinking that they knew. One thing about the orange guy is that he says what he's going to do, and he does it. He said it was going to be retribution. And so, in my humble opinion, it was, people voted with that being fine because it wasn't going to affect them. It's fine that the DEI wasn't about them, right? Federal jobs loss wasn't about them, but it is about them. It wasn't about the veterans, but it is about them. And so if you love this country so much and this democracy so much, you get out there and let's see if they declare martial law on you, because that is where it's going. Now, does not mean that we're laying somewhere in the corner somewhere, holding, putting our heads under the sand, because that's not going to do any good. What we're not going to do is advertise our strategy and what we need to do to make sure that our communities are safe. We know that one of history has shown us that when we do focus on ourselves, that's a problem. It's a problem because we're supposed to be here to serve them, as it was discussed earlier. And so the fact that we would have the nerve to go somewhere and work on our liberation and how we're going to get through. And you said, I think I heard you say, I've been at the Delta days for the last few days. So some conversation, I think I heard it here, I might have heard it here the last 4 days, right? Or in New York, right? But I am certain that we will get through this. And as you said, it may not be in my lifetime, but I think that this generation, will be challenged to find the fortitude, as we say in Delta, to do what needs to be done. And we all have to find the courage. And don't be afraid to be afraid, but just don't let that fear block you from doing what has to be done. Because if we don't fight, it's over. But we have to be strategic, and we cannot do it on social media. We cannot lay out our strategy. We have to find different ways, and we're doing that, right? And we gather, but also know that our institutions, Dr. Spence, our institutions are Black institutions have to find ways to make sure that we are able to be around to fight this fight, because that is another part of, I believe, the retribution. So, tell them, if it wasn't you in the room, talk to your cousins.
Yeah.
Right. Stop, and I shared that, and, Kim got me in trouble, I was like, I didn't want to say nothing, but I knew I was going to say what I had to say. The older I get, the older you get, you just don't know how to not say, and they're looking at you, it's like, Talk to your cousin.
Yeah,
Because
I love
you
that.
want us to jump out here and put our bodies on the line,
Mhm.
and you did this,
Yeah,
we would have 92%.
right.
And so as Black women, that's the sentiment.
Yeah,
But it's not saying that we're somewhere just sitting around drinking some, latte. We are also strategically understand that with this kind of regime that has now taken over, I've lived through investigations.
right.
So don't tell me what they won't do. And that's when you have quote unquote friends in the White House. So we understand that people will weaponize our institutions against us and us against each other.
Right. Right.
Right.
Okay.
And we're gonna have to find ways to find the courage.
I like that.
Our
I will s-
ancestors,
Mhm.
we have the roadmap from what our ancestors did, and they suffered a whole lot more than what we are, and we have a whole lot more resources. We can make sure our institutions don't go under.
Right.
We decide to do that.
Okay, so now I will say that when you said like Delta said fortitude, me, you, and Kim all kind of smile. It's like I know the Delta fortitude and what that means. Tanya, I want to go to you because on March 21st, we marked the 60th anniversary of the adoption of the International Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It's a human rights treaty that the United States ratified along with 181 other nations, but America's compliance has always been shaky. You can sign a document talking about the elimination of racial discrimination and sign a document calling for segregated spaces at the same time and never blink twice about that. So what's happening at this moment and the rise in white supremacy, can you speak about the work that's being done to combat what we're trying to put in place in terms of this elimination of racial discrimination?
Well, first, again, thank you, Dr. Kaye, for convening all of us together and for the opportunity to have this conversation. It's always a pleasure to be on here with distinguished panelists, friends, colleagues. Thank you, Melanie, for saying your piece. I know we put you in that spot, but I'm glad you said it. Listen, in preparing for this, I actually went back because I have provided testimony to the United Nations on numerous occasions. And one of those, I was providing testimony years ago on the International Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, speaking about racial profiling, speaking about police brutality, speaking about our criminal justice system. And like you said, I just looked at that, and this was 11 years ago, Dr. Kaye, and nothing much has changed, unfortunately, in terms of the disparities that continue to exist when it comes to our compliance with this treaty. As you said, we've signed a lot of treaties. I can go back through and look at all the variety of treaties that America is signatory to. However, similarly that we are dealing with the commemoration of the 60th anniversary of ICERD. This is also 60th anniversary, we already celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. We're now within the we're in the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. We are dealing with the variety of civil rights laws that passed during the civil rights movement. We're commemorating these, yet we're looking at a retrenchment. I mean, the Southern Manifesto was real with regard to the inhibition, the denial and the refusal of Southern states to want to comply with the demands under Brown v. Board to actually desegregate, to integrate. And so we saw that transpiring after Brown v. Board within the civil rights movement after the 1960s. Yet when we got to even 1970s and 1980s, we started seeing a retrenchment again. People were still saying, oh, well, we're done with that. We've had enough. That this is actually, we don't need to continue to move forward on the implementation of our civil rights laws. And so now, as we look at this, as we look at the map in terms of the hate incidences, if you go to, I think you can go to the Southern Poverty Law Center and look at the map of the increase of hate crimes in our country. And you see it really spiked after the election of President Obama, right? And then it continued to increase kind of stabilized a little bit. And now if you look at it again with the enabling of 47 that we've seen both in the first presidency and now in the second, the extent of organizations engaging in hate crimes and hate incidents is just incredible. And it's not just in the South. Let me be clear. It is across the country, and it actually, you look at it, you see a high incidence within the Northeast corridor. So what is going on? We've got people fighting back. I mean, we know our organizations, our litigation experts, you know, those, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law that I used to work with, our friends at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. There are lawsuits that are being dropped continuously in terms of fighting back and trying to stop this retrenchment and maintaining the continual march towards the implementation of our civil rights laws. And understanding that our federal agencies, the Department of Education, was created under the guise of trying to implement these civil rights laws for the protection of students in our schools, Brown v. Board. That our federal government has been that bastion of trying to implement our civil rights laws, and whether it comes from environmental justice issues, when it looks at, you're looking at employment, we're looking at the Department of Justice. So there are organizations, and I have to say, you know, I'm so proud to be working with African American Policy Forum, because we're calling this on the carpet with regards to how this has really been about the anti-Blackness, that's how this has started, that people can't ignore this, the root of the issue when it comes to the strategies that they're putting in place with regards to litigation, with regards to grassroots mobilization, or anything that we're engaging in. So yes, there is a fight that is occurring. Not everybody understands and sees all of that. And that's why we're here today, to make sure that people get it, but also to come together and talk about how you can get that information so that we can all be mobilized together.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And that is actually where we're going, folks. I want to just take a moment here and invite you to put your questions into the Q&A portion, to continue to engage on chat. We have a very special session for you at 9 o'clock when the panelists are done. Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields is going to come back because, you know, I feel like we're taking you to the edge of the cliff at this moment. Dr. Shields is going to talk about other strategies to pull you off this cliff, and talking about mental health, talking about physical health. I mean, because folks, right now we are in the middle of a battle and we have to stay focused on that. What we're going to do in this second 30 minutes with my panelists is we're talking solutions now. We're talking this Magna Carta moment. We've had 3 already put down by Representative Al Green, where he talked about doing a report card, using our eloquence to write opinion papers, and marches and protests. He's saying get in the street. I am arguing that there is a price to pay for freedom. I sent out my statement today to my members, and I quoted a couple of people. Medgar Evers said that freedom has never been free. And Coretta Scott King said freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. And Malcolm X said, if you're not ready to die for it, put the word freedom out of your vocabulary. And then I mentioned my great-grandfather, who for some odd reason used to take me for walks to the family cemetery. Some people go to the park, some people go to the water. My family went to the cemetery, but he would talk about how there were people in that graveyard, my family members, who died either waiting to be free or fighting for it. And my great-grandfather would say, which one are you planning to do? You're going to wait for freedom, or you're going to fight for it? There is a price to pay. So we're talking about this Magna Carta. I'm going to put my 3 pieces on the table, and then Lester, I'm going to come to you and let's put this list together. So here are my 3 things, folks, and we're going to pull all this together and make sure you get it in an email. I'm quoting here Timothy Snyder because he said something in his On Tyranny that's many years old that works for this moment. He said, find an organization that is doing the work that you agree with and defend them. So I add to that, you can't just defend them with your thoughts and prayers. I mean, I'm with that, but that's not enough. Give your tithes to your church, give your offerings to the organizations that are doing the work that you believe in, like ASALH, like AAPF, like the work Melanie's doing. Like, you give your offerings to those organizations, because the fight is real and fighting for freedom is not cheap. Like, we got to be able to help fund the things that we believe in to do the work. The second thing I would say to do is create local communities of action and accountability. You have to work together, like Dr. Spence said, to demand justice and equality. Remember how Audre Lorde told us that the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house? But I believe we can take those tools and we can stomp up the toilet, we can flood the basement, like we can disrupt the flow. We may not be able to unbuild the house, but we can definitely make sure that things are not running as normal. And the third thing I would say for the Magna Carta that we're putting together is to show up and be present in spaces where you're not expected to be, which means go to the local Republican community meetings, speak up about what's happening, call all the representatives and senators, flood their inbox, write them, call them, X them. Do not let up. Because if you do, they're going to take your silence as a form of being complicit. And you never want them to mistake your silence as a way of approval. Those are the three things I add to what Representative Al Green has already put down. Lester, I come to you next. Since racism and white supremacy does not happen in the darkness, we got to bring this to light. Can you give us 2 or 3 things you would add to our Magna Carta about what people can do now?
So this is a perfect segue. Thank you. And I'll say at the outset, what I'm doing is I'm working on the assumption that we're not where we want to be, and we're not going to get there tomorrow. So what we want to do is just get people to do just a little bit more. And then after that, a little bit more. And then after that, a little bit more. So with that said, I'd say that in addition to supporting organizations that are doing political work, I would say support Black organizations or similar organizations that aren't necessarily naturally political, but can be a source of building community, that can be a source of mutual aid. So and in some instances, that actually may mean giving dues to organizations that don't fit your politics necessarily, maybe outside of them, but you should still do it. So if that means, you already talked about the church, I'm a Q, I'm financial with Omega Psi Phi. I'm going to be financial with the NAACP. I'm a life member of the Black Faculty Staff Association of my university. So do that. The next thing I would suggest is representatives are actually being blasted with calls. So what I would do is first, I would organize like meetings where maybe people can call together. But then instead of calling, or in addition, the next step from that is actually going to their office and organizing sit-ins. And I'm extending that to include Democratic representatives. I disagree. I believe strongly that they represent the first line of defense. And even as they're acting in ways I strongly disagree with, it's our responsibility to make them function in ways they're supposed to as representatives. And then even the act of sitting in, again, you start small and you go big. You call first, you go sit in next, and then that naturally leads itself to other activities. I'll start. Oh, the final thing. I've begun giving lectures at local libraries. I am open to talk more about this stuff in local spaces in Baltimore and Detroit, back home, and other spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lester Spence. I'm going to add to that ASALH has launched Freedom Schools. I mean, we are of the belief that you take the environments where you are and you turn them into spaces where we're teaching about our history using every platform that you have. Professor Crenshaw, I'll come to you next, because you once said that if anti-Blackness is too controversial to teach, if it's too dangerous to discuss, then the door is open for other forms of erasure to follow. Can you outline for us, 2 or 3 things that you're saying, you know what, no matter where you are, you can start here, like Lester Spence said, just doing a little bit more tomorrow than you did yesterday?
Well, Dr. Kaye, of course, I'm going to sign on to everything that you all have talked about so far, and I'm going to add to it objectives. All of these mechanisms, joining up, protest, sit-in, are part of ways of achieving certain goals. So here's mine. First of all, we need to discredit everything they say about us, because everything they say about us is a lie. So when they took our history out of the curriculum, because our story is framed as un-American, it's a lie. Our history is American history, and whatever stories they tell about the United States without us in it, that's the lie. That's the indoctrination. That's the belief that this country was born perfect and just kept getting better. Everything that Americans take for granted about the freedoms we have, even the very birthright, literally and figuratively, comes from our struggle. So if our struggle isn't part of how people understand what limited degree of democracy we are trying to save right now, if they don't understand our history, they don't understand the centrality of anti-Black racism, the centrality of our story, and the centrality of understanding when we're coming to the brink again in the same way that we came to that brink before. So, you know, the idea that this country was this war that we had over 150 years ago was fought over states' rights, that's not what it was about. It was about the right of white men to create a republic that was built on the idea of white supremacy. That's what that war was about. We defeated it. And that's what the war against wokeness is about again, the idea that we have no role in determining the future of this country. Any place of authority that they see us is an illegitimate place of authority. So we have to call out the lies that they tell and not give it any legitimacy whatsoever. We've got to disrupt. And I totally agree with what you said earlier. We have to disrupt the natural desire for people to seek normalcy, because this is not a normal moment. And if we give in to the idea that it is something other than a crisis, then we've undermined our ability to actually fight this where it is. I actually think that we should turn what Representative Al Green did into a verb. We should say we need to go in there and Al Green them. Take whatever we got at them. And we have to remember, our babies are watching us, the world is watching us, and the other side is watching us. So whatever we are willing to accept sets the new baseline for the next struggle. We're way in our own territory, and we haven't yet effectively pushed back, and we've got to start it. And the last thing is, we've got to deny them victory. We've got to deny them the legitimacy. We've got to deny them the respect. And that might mean that we have got to have some words to say to our own people. I remember David Axelrod and a lot of the other sort of established Democrats actually taking issue with Al Green and some of the other of our representatives who refused to give Trump the legitimacy behind the crazy claims that he's making. If they're not willing, after they ride to power on our votes, if they're not willing to show up and show out for us, then we need to usher them out. And let me be clear about that. To leaders, our leaders who believe that as long as they stay out of sight, they're out of our minds, you are not out of our minds. We see you, or rather we don't see you, leading the troops. And so we need to remember, when times got hard, some of our leaders didn't show up. If we're not willing to draft them back into their roles of leaders, then we need to escort them out and find the leadership that we need. We got to recover our history. We can't forget what's happening. And we've got to take note, because this fight is for not just the next 4 years and for the next century. We've got to let the future know this is what was up. This is what we did. These are the victories we won. These were the ones we didn't. And yes, we knew what was at stake.
You know, Kim, I want you to hold on to the mic for a second, because I want to point out two moments that were very difficult for me to experience. One was in Representative Hakeem Jeffries, when he got on that mic. And if you listen to my radio show, I say it all the time in his voice, when he's like, what leverage do we have now? They have the White House, they have the House, they have the Senate. It's their government now. What leverage do we have? Like, I wanted to throw something at my TV. And then I think about Chuck Schumer and him saying, I can take the bullets. I did it for the people. when he made that decision after saying, I'm going to stand and we're going to stand. So can you talk about what I feel at this moment is a real betrayal on the part of our elected leaders in Washington? Not all of them. I see Rep. Al Green. I lift up Rep. Jasmine Crockett, my soror. I lift up Rep. AOC. But it's too many of them that are acting like it's just, hey, let's bide our time. You know, we'll wait for the vote. When by the time we get to 2 years, there might not be anything left.
Well, let me thank you for that question. Let me preface it by saying I'm speaking on my behalf, not anybody else on this call. I got to give everybody deniability because it's a very complicated world that we're living in. Right?
Yes, it is.
But listen, you know, there are two things that I'm glad didn't exist back during the Selma Bridge crossing and the March on Washington. One was the polling industry. Because if the polling industry had gotten a hold of the I Have a Dream speech, it would not have been given. Because the polling industry tells us what you can say given what people think, feel, and know. People didn't think, feel, or know that America owed us a promissory note back in 1963, and they would have told Martin Luther King not to say that. He knew that he had to say that and bring the moral compass into the conversation. That's not about a political calculation. That's not about looking how many votes do I have here. It's about saying what was right. It was about saying what our legitimate expectations were. It was about saying what we were not going to leave the battlefield until we were able to get it done, right? So I'm glad that they didn't get a hold to them. But I'm going to say something controversial, but also true.
You say something controversial? What? No.
You know, we were all in Selma not too long ago, and somebody pointed out that the people that march across that bridge, the people who created the conditions for the Voting Rights Act to get passed, were not elected officials. The power of the civil rights movement didn't come from people who were elected. It came from people from the bottom who forced the agenda, who dictated what the terms of engagement have to be. So yes, it's been a wonderful thing that we have been able to exercise our right to vote, that we have been able to choose leaders. But we have to lead the leaders. We can't expect the leaders to lead us. They've got a whole different calculus that they're looking at. And a lot of it involves, who do they have to satisfy? Who can't they not afford to piss off? Who do they need to run to raise money from? And who do they need to appease? If we don't change the equation on the ground, if we don't make it costly for them to sell us out, then there's no reason to expect that they're going to do anything different. So everything we've got to do is about how do we change the equation on the ground? How do we make it costly enough that they have to think twice before they pivot, they appease, they bend the knee, or they remain silent? As long as there's no cost to them for not doing it and benefit for them to do it, they're going to continue to do it. That's just the reality. And it doesn't matter if they look like us or not.
Well, then this goes right into Melanie Campbell, because Melanie, you once said, I'm all in the fight to protect our rights, freedoms, and democracy. I'm all in to make voting my good Black job. Well, the election, as we know, is not for the next 2 years. And we've had 74 million people who stood with VP Harris, who are feeling like, okay, what do we do now? So can you lay down some things? I know you said we shouldn't be out doing it in the open, but what are some specific things that people can get started doing so they don't feel like they're just sitting back and waiting for the next 2 years for an election?
Thank you. I'm going to step back because I've been listening and reading the chat as we're sitting here listening. And one of the things that someone pointed out that I do want to lift up, and that is Kwanzaa. We talk about Kwanzaa, 7 principles. Part of what we have to do is not just do that for the 7 days of Kwanzaa, but it's a Kwanzaa time. And what's happening is that we're going to have to continue to organize around elections. Yes, There's a governor's race in Virginia. There's a governor's race in New Jersey. There are mayoral races in several cities that are led by Black folks. So the electoral thing is not next year, it's now. And so we have to make sure that we pay attention to that. And even more so because of the kinds of federal cuts that are taking place, we've got to go back to how we're going to take care of our people. Right. I can talk about policy all day long. I can talk about voting all day long, but if I have lost my job, or if I'm, or if messing around with Social Security, we have this administration is not an administration; it's a regime that put people in place to dismantle the entire governmental structure and indeed civil society. They go after academia. They're going after the government structure. They're going after the arts. So that's what authoritarian is. That's what autocracy is. So, but all that is happening, but it's happening to people, our relatives, our folks. And so we're going to have to do more as we try to get people motivated to stay engaged and deal with how we're going to take care of ourselves. How, I being in different meetings in the last, since my own summit, I hadn't had a day. Lord have mercy. We got to, rest is part of resistance too.
Yes,
so
it is.
As soon as I can get to some sleep, real sleep, I'm gonna get there. But I'm serious about that. We have to, because this is a long haul fight. But the way the system is being dismantled as a nation, as flawed as it is, we have to have some self-determination. We have to organize around, I said, we have to vote with our money. That's another way. Now, one of the things that we did, people are doing boycotts, boycotts, all kinds of things. We can't spend money with people who say they don't support us. It's just that simple. Black women created Target. It's called Target, but Black women created Target. So those who had the means to shop at Target, right? That's the Black middle class, pretty much, right? Okay, some responsibility is you can hold off on going to Target. Go to Black Wall Street if you're down in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think it's still, I pray it's still over in Stonecrest. Spend with our own people, right? Also, we have to leverage the people. Let me tell you, I just saw this yesterday. Costco, they're not the best, but they got out there. And be clear, there's no perfect panacea situation we're gonna find ourselves in. But they said they support diversity, equity, inclusion. There's some stuff with that, right? And then here's Target saying that they're not. And so what has happened is that Target has lost what 5 million shoppers too, and Costco's gained 7 million, right? That is not one organized effort. That's individuals, and Dr. Spence, that's part of it. It's like, what can you do? Is think about where you're spending your money, right? Also think about what we have to be prepared for, and find ways. And so as a to do is check inside your own situation, and make sure that you know how your family is going to survive and how our community is going to survive. I come from small town where we didn't know we were poor, but we were, right? But we had to raise our own vegetables, and my daddy went fishing, and he bring back that mullet, and we hated mullet, but it was because they didn't have the money to go to the grocery store to buy, or the neighbor down the street. Some of this we got to go back to what got us over, as well as demand, because we have built this country, right? So no one's saying, some people say, well, we're just going to go over here and just create our own, well, we helped create the whole damn thing, right? So I'm not giving up anything, but we also have to survive the time.
Right.
And so if something happens to Social Security, what are we gonna do? Most Black women, that we don't have retirements. So if the Social Security check doesn't come, what are we gonna do? So what are we gonna take care of our seniors? Or you put this fool over at Health and Human Services, right? Yeah. And the things that are going to happen or not happen with maternal health for young women. So getting it down to, and the last thing I want to say, when it comes to our young people, being able to connect those dots for them, right? and not chastise young people, but connect dots for them to see, because we're going to feel this impact of all these things in the next 60 to 90 days.
Yes.
Real time, real life. People are going to be out here, and we have to be a village. We have to create that village in a way that we haven't in, I'd say, in recent times. And we're going to be forced to. And I'm excited about how we're going to do, right? How we're going to make sure. If my sister lost her job, what we're going to do. Young people walking around here, we are resilient, but we've been, because of this, right? We're less connected than we ever have been. So people feel isolated. So the mental health, I'm glad you all are talking about that, because that's real. People are going through things and thinking they can't share it, or it's only happening to me. And so we have to be that village for our people as we continue to fight for those rights and those freedoms that we well damn deserve.
Oh, thank you so much, Melanie. I was actually thinking and talking to people who work at Target, and they're like, look, I am all for the boycott. I just want you to recognize that in the boycotts that are happening, that there are Black people who work at Target, who work at Walmart. If they start closing the stores, it's not going to affect those at the top. It's going to affect our people. It's kind of what I say, you know what, if you're having ham and eggs, if I'm the chicken because I'm middle class and I'm choosing not to go to Target, I'm only offering eggs. If you work at Target, that's your livelihood, you're offering your whole body. And I think we have to talk about how we can look at a redistribution of our own wealth to be able to help Black folks who we should not consider to be expendable, because those of us who have money are just driving to Costco, versus someone where Target feeds their family because that's where they work. So I think these are some big questions we have to wrestle with in these small groups that Lester Spence talked about. Tanya, I'm going to come to you, and then we're going to close this up so we can move into the next part of the program that I'll bring up with Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields. Tanya, I come to you last to give some specific advice here for parents, because I know if you start talking about the Department of Education, even though, 47 said, oh, it's so we can be better, when I have a lot of questions about that sitting here in Baltimore about him keeping, our name in his mouth when it comes to education. But we're trying to figure out, for parents who have children who struggle in school, DOE is not going to protect them. It provides protection for Black children, for women, for children with disabilities. All of that's going to be wiped out. So as someone who used to be the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Education, just a few things that you would tell parents, like in this moment, here are some things you can do as they weaponize education against our children at this point.
Well, thank you for that question. I want to co-sign what has already been said. And I want to add briefly that and reiterate that as we tell people who not to shop with, we've got to give people the support and the mechanism to continue the boycotting, to continue the massive resistance. That's what was done during the Civil Rights Movement. That's what they don't want us to know, that we provided for our communities. And so we've got to provide that support. And so similarly, as you talk about the Department of Education, yeah, that's personal. And as a parent of two boys that are in a public school system, and the daughter of a former teacher and principal, who I believe is on the line tonight, listening to me about this. It is personal because I just had to, I'm dealing with friends, I'm a coach as well for track, and I'm dealing with parents who were talking about how they are scared, and that because their child is now not going to potentially receive the resources, their child who has an IEP, which is under the Individuals, Disabilities and Education Act. That is a support program that is provided that kind of details how it is that they can provide additional resources. The federal government provides this type of support mechanism. I am hearing from people who are worried about, well, what's going to happen to the food, the supplemental grants that are provided in schools, particularly for those communities, because it's not just students of color. Let me be clear. The Department of Education wasn't founded just to support students of color and those that look like you and me. It was founded to provide equal opportunity, a fair and appropriate public education for all people, rural communities, those students. So parents are concerned, and they should be. And what they need to do, and like myself, I encourage people to use their own voice, because we have our local PTAs, there are local school boards. I know that it's difficult, but you know what? This hits home for everybody on some level, because the public school systems are that is what is providing the support mechanism for so many of us to be able to rise above our means, right? You can't take our education away. You receive that education, that's always within you. But parents are worried and scared, and they rightfully should be. And this is why we've got to also educate people and educate our communities that the Department of Education, what it really does, and that it is there, like you said, to support those that are being discriminated in the schools. I mean, the Office of Civil Rights, 47 has gone and closed the majority of civil rights offices across the country. You've got the dismantling of the office. You've got the dismantling and the defunding of schools, and the grant programs that would go out to support not only, as I said, across the board public school students, also the taking away of resources for teachers. This is what people get, that you're not providing the necessary resources for the teachers to teach your kids. This is Republican, Democrats, Independents, Black, Purple, everybody. So this is something that I feel, and I said I'm very passionate about, which is why I'm sitting here in this corner, because when my kids can't hear me right now as I'm yelling about this, that, you have to be, look, if it means something to you to ensure that your child has what they need, right, and they're able to rise above their means, then just take that one. We're not asking you to go march all of. Everybody can't do everything, right? But everybody can do one thing, right? And if that one thing is going to your PTA meeting, if that one thing is going to that school board meeting, if that one thing is talking to another parent, all right, or if that one thing is educating your child about what it is that they need to know in class, because they're not necessarily getting the history that they're being taught, as Dr. Crenshaw mentioned, making sure that we do one thing, because education is critical, it's fundamental. And I appreciate that people are concerned about it, but don't be just concerned, do something. Support these federal workers, support them, as they have been there for us, and you don't even realize how much they've been there for us. And so I encourage everybody to do what you can, but do something.
Thank you so much, Tanya. So folks, this is our last question. And it's a short one, a round robin, before I pass it back over to Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields to talk about like mental health, physical health, like you got to take care of yourself. I'm going to go around to each of our panelists, our esteemed panelists, for just one quick word of something that brings you hope. Like we have to end, because I think our ability to be able to laugh and dream and build community, like that has sustained us even when they've been beating us at the door. We have been able to build a family. So I'll come first to Professor Kimberlé Crenshaw. First, I want to thank you for the African American Policy Forum, providing us with the video. The work that you do is incredible. Full transparency, folks, I am the school superintendent for Critical Race Theory Summer School. And I know that in May, we will have the National Week of Action coming up for AAPF. We're looking at Critical Race Theory Summer School in Tennessee this year. And so I come to you just as the executive director of AAPF, professor of law at Columbia and UCLA. What is it, Professor Crenshaw, that gives you some hope?
This is what gives me hope. This kind of community, this kind of we see you, we got each other. It is the reason why when things get tough, we get to work, because the work isn't just an output, it's input as well. I am lifted by this conversation. I feel amazing that there's so many people who are on the same page. I feel that sense of, am I alone out here, just dissipating when we are actually together. So when we do things like the strategic convening that we all did together on Friday, and we were all describing the part of the elephant we saw, we knew that that was a precursor to taking the elephant on. When we talk about freedom to learn from May 1st to May 7th, knowing that people all across the country are going to be doing activities cities to say you don't get to take our literacy away. We ain't talking about 1850 where you could actually criminalize our ability to become literate. When we know that people are seeing it and moving at the same time, that is lifting, that feeds the soul, that feeds the spirit, that feeds our determination to fight. I know that is what our ancestors are passing down to us. And the fact that we can hold it up and do it together with each other, that is what gives us the stamina that we need to take on the fight that we must for our future generations.
Thank you, Professor Crenshaw. Folks, you don't have to organize alone. You've been put in the chat. How do we organize? Connect with AAPF, connect with the Carson Institute, connect with WEAA, connect with what's happening. Remember, all politics are local. Start out and connecting with the people there. Professor Spence, I want to come to you because there's a big question that people have said like 4 or 5 times. Can you just interpret the sweatshirt for us? Can you tell us what gives you hope and tell us what's on the sweatshirt that everybody is talking about in the chat?
I'm not really the hope person, but what I'll do,
I know.
I'm not really the hope guy. I will say that in every metropolitan area and in a number of places outside of metropolitan areas, folks are already organizing. So it's just about finding them. And then as far as the sweatshirt, I wanted to come up with ways. There are a number of different ways to articulate and communicate resistance. So what I did was I created a sweatshirt with basically 5 ways that Black folk across the world say we resist. So it's Xhosa, Swahili, Brazilian Portuguese, Rastafari, and an African American. The African Americans, oh, hell no. And then under that is we resist. So if y'all want from it, so you only see the first 2 lines, but I'm like, yo, I got another t-shirt. My boy, I was talking to one of my colleagues, a political science colleague, my best friend, and he's like, the best revenge is a Black future. So I made a t-shirt based on that. So it's all these things that we can do as individuals, socially, economically, and politically to communicate that. But it's all about institutions. Institutions generate hope. And the key thing is to not fall victim to despair, right? So hope spikes and then plateau. Hope spikes, but then it goes. But if you fall victim to despair, despair really, really, really lingers. So the real question is, what do we do to stave off despair?
I love that. Best revenge is a Black future. Folks, we're going to talk about despair when I hand the mic back over to Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields. Melanie Campbell, President CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, doing Delta Deers up today on the Hill. Can you very quickly tell us something that gives you hope?
Well, I'm a hope girl and I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it every day on purpose, right? For my own self, right? I think I am so, as I believe that as this country is tearing itself apart, that we have this opportunity to build something better, right? And so as we go through this very, 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 in many ways, frightening for many people time, I've been in so many spaces just in the last 2 weeks, right, where our people from all different walks of life, you're right, out here organizing. We just have to connect those dots with each other, right, and build that collective resistance, because we are the resistance, in many, many ways. That has not changed. We have always had to resist the notion of being second class, third class, 2/3 human, all these things, since we've been on these shores. And so we are winning in many ways, which is why folks come for us. And so I am more hopeful and I'm more determined than ever. I'm learning lessons, about what allyship is or is not. And what I want to spend my energy is building allies within our own community, right? So that we don't fall prey to elitism. I saw that in the chat, which is a real thing, right? That you may not even realize you're being elite, but we all have lived experiences. But our people, we're gonna be all right. It's in a fight, right?
Yep.
And I always say this last thing is that don't put your head in the sand, right? You know, what's best is to turn and face your enemy in their face. If you're gonna take me down, we going like this. I'll never be where you hit me in the back. You know, stand straight and stand tall. And we are resilient people, and we are winning, and we're gonna win, and we're gonna save this doggone country from itself. We're in it, because if it burned down, we're gonna burn down with it. So we're not doing that.
I love that.
All right.
Thank you, Melanie
Thank you.
Campbell. Folks are looking how to organize. I'm telling you, join ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. I am the national president. I send out a statement every month. We are standing on Dr. Carter G. Wood's work. We will not back down. We will not cower. We are organizing within our branches. You are not alone. You are already a member. We just need your new email address so we can connect with you, so we can bring you into the fold. Tanya Clayhouse, I'll come to you last. Can you very quickly tell us what gives you hope?
I'll say this. So it is events like this, and because I'm going to admit, after the election, I needed a moment. I mean, a long moment. And I told people, I said, don't talk to me about that. I don't have anything to say to you. I can't help you right now because I need to figure out how I'm going to help myself and my family. So what gives me hope are places where I can feel uplifted, and where it is that I am reminded of my worth, my self-worth. So it's my family, but it's also places working with Dr. Crenshaw and staff at the African American Policy Forum. It's working with Melanie, working with you, Dr. Kaye. And it's also, I'm in part of the National Bar Association, the Civil Rights Law Section chair. And I want to just say, for the record, it's also being uplifted by those that are in your craft, and that are those that are within the Black Bar, because it's, we weren't allowed into the American Bar Association originally. That's why the MBA was formed. And so it's places like that where you are reminded that I am somebody, even though right now the world is telling me I'm not. But you know what? I am, and I have been, and I will continue to be. And so that's where I find that hope, because right now I think a lot of people are looking for that little light of have some despair and looking for that light. And so those are the places that I find the hope, so that I will keep going, because I know that's what faith is. And so I'm going to keep going and being led by faith, and being supported, and accept that support from those around me as best as I can. So thank you so much for letting me be here, Dr. Kaye.
No
Dr.
problem.
Kaye, there's one more
Yes.
thing.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think what's important is that I saw this in the is that you are a source. We have to make sure that we get information from trusted sources. And so being able to get that out, the Black newspapers, the Black press, because we also have that as an issue, and being able to make sure that our people are getting real information from trusted sources, especially in this time of bad information, lies, and all kinds of things.
And what gives me hope, thank you so much, Melanie, is I host Today with Dr. Kaye. It is a radio show that comes on every day from 3 to 6 from Morgan State University. Being on the radio and having that opportunity to share. I always think very seriously about that song from Hamilton, when your children tell your story, they'll tell the story of tonight. When my great-grandchildren tell the story of what happened at this moment, how everything collapsed, I want them to say, but great-grandma went down standing up. Great-grandma fought till the end. That's what gives me hope, that I'm writing the narrative for my future generations to follow. Thank you again, Professor Crenshaw. Thank you, Professor Spence. Thank you, Melanie Campbell. Thank you, Tanya Clayhouse. And I'm bringing Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields back onto the stage for the second part of our program. Thank you, panelists.
So what gives me hope is that people are waking up, not just to what's wrong, but their own power to make it right. I see hope in young people organizing, questioning, creating new paths when none existed. Hope lives in the small wins, a conversation that shifts mindset. Hope is not blind. Hope is not soft. Hope is not work. And we are doing it. Thank you again to our incredible panelists for your insight, your honesty, and your courage. Now, we've been talking about how what's happening in the world in our government, our systems, and our communities is not political, it is personal. It's impacting our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. That's why I'm especially grateful for the presence of two people who do deep work in this space. Dr. Kevin Washington is a leading psychologist and healer who helps us understand the mental and emotional weight of injustice and how we can begin to process, resist, and heal. And Coach Chauncey is all about the mind-body connection. He's passionate about health, wellness, and in the gym, he talks about politics and policies. And he's not just any trainer. He keeps both Dr. Kaye and me grounded and fit for this work, literally. These two brothers remind us that liberation isn't just about laws, it's about wellness. And without caring for ourselves, we can't sustain the fight. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Brother Dr. Kevin Washington and my coach, Coach Chauncey Whitehead. Step into the room.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Shields. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Good evening, Dr. Washington, and thank you, Dr. Kaye. I'm very humbled to be on here with this esteemed panel.
Well, I'm going to start. Hey, Brother Kevin Washington, we want to say something first?
No, I was good to connect with you, Brother Chauncey. Yeah. So here we are. Let's have this conversation. Let's go for it. That was powerful. I want to commend Dr. Kaye and ASALH and the discourse on what is happening to us in this now moment.
Well, Dr. Washington, we welcome you back. We know you just came back from the continent. You were constantly traveling across the country doing work as an international psychologist. So, Dr. Washington, as we navigate the intense political and social climate, many people are feeling a mix of, let me just say, fear, rage, and fatigue. So from your lens as a psychologist and healer, and I have to stress healer, how is the constant state of stress impacting our mental health, especially in the Black communities? But before we talk about our mental health, I want you to talk about your mental health, and then what practices can we lean in to protect our peace?
Wow. So you read that. I mean, that's very loaded, right? So the idea is that we now Sapa Empowerment is what we do the work around Ubuntu psychotherapy. So it's an entire model for how we do the work. It's not based on this European notion of what it means to be human, but what it means to be human from an African-centered perspective. UBU means being into you, means unifying life force. And as Melanie Campbell mentioned so eloquently about the issue of pulling together, she mentioned the notion of Kwanzaa. And there's a word that is elevated during Kwanzaa, which is a Harambe, and she was talking about let's pull together. So we have to recognize that there are some people that operate, or some people operate via this process of ruling by chaos. And so when there's some disruption that takes place, then they can rule. And then there was a discussion earlier about fear. And what can you do in the context of fear? You can do absolutely nothing but actually be afraid. So the idea is here is that the population that runs rules by chaos and confusion. The other thing is that, Brother Chauncey, you know about this also well, is that on the playground, in the prison yard, any other space, when you want to prove yourself, you go up to the biggest person on the playground to punch them, and then you want to set the record straight. Well, that means then that when this person came out, Dr. Kaye has been talking about 47, we talked about 45, 47, and talked about the 2.0, the 1.2, whatever everybody's called around this entire process. When this person came out, he came and he swung and he punched. And who did he punch? He started with blackness. And Kimberlé Crenshaw reminded us about this idea of anti-blackness. They ran an entire discourse around, they ran on Black. Why? How can they run on Black? Because they had been learning in the academic setting, we talk about the issue of books and so forth. They've learned everything that we learned, that there's nothing really significant and relevant about Black life. And so they learned it, we learned it. And so they simply heard the dog whistle in his discourse, and then they moved in accord with that. But the point I want to make is that they came and they swung and they hit the baddest on the playground. So we have to be clear then, is that if they came swinging, first of all, at Blackness, something about this population must be awesome. So we begin by saying we must be the best of the best because you come for me first. What is this thing that they're coming for? They're coming for this idea of people who've been resilient, who've been able to exercise a reality, who've been able to do exactly what Dr. Kaye is doing right now, organized in the context of confusion, not succumbing to the discourse, but elevating in spite of it. So I want to say this, first of all, people have to know who they are. Know that you come from greatness, that you are a seed of a seed of a seed of a seed of these seed, that you cannot be destroyed. Know that people like you have always been conceptualized in ways to move forward. As a matter of fact, Gladys Knight had the song that helped me when I was going through a tough time, says, I have to use the best of my imagination to keep on keeping on in a bad situation. The idea of digging deep to understand who we are. The brother said that the best revenge is a Black future. When you have taken your best swing at a population, at a person, and they still stand and they look at you straight square in the face, there's a problem that you've created right there. And that is, you said that I will always be here. If I am the seed of a seed of a seed of a seed of these seeds, I will always be here. So we recognize that who we are, first of all. And secondly, do not allow somebody's disruption or interpretation of you become your reality. Let me say this clearly, is that a person can have their perception, and their perception is their reality. But their reality is not the truth. We have to be clear about this. We're saying about this idea of who's American, and they're saying that America was built this way. That's their perception, and their perception is their reality, but their reality is not truth, right? And so we spend a lot of time trying to argue and debate with somebody about something. Dr. Kaye, the worst thing to do, I consider, is to try to create a counter narrative. Right, the counter narrative then leaves the narrative that has been there that could be a lie as a central statement of discourse. We then create not a counter narrative, we create a corrective narrative or corrective discourse. That is, what is the truth about who we are as a people? And our truth is, and we lay those things out. So, and Kimberlé Crenshaw was talking about, reversing the lie. Don't reverse the lie, so to speak. Just speak the truth. Because the law of inverse operation says that two things cannot operate in the same space at the same time. The law of inverse operation says that two things cannot exist in the same space at the same time. Meaning that when my truth rises, then by default, what you have said automatically becomes a lie, because my truth, my corrective narrative, restates what it is that you've had to deal with. And the last thing is to increase awareness about what is really happening in the world. I think that we spend a lot of time in these monobiblial spaces. Like, so if one is part of the church, one is in the Bible, monobibliitis, right? One does just one thing. If we're in academia, we're in one space. If we're in athletics, we're in one space. Increase awareness about what is happening, right, around you. Increase awareness about what's going on. Understand patterns and processes and practices. Watch people and how they operate. That's how you learn. You learn through understanding history. There's a population that was having to deal with some water in this particular space because it was contaminated down the river. And so the scientists would pull out the water, and they would engage in the process of purifying the water so the people could drink it. One scientist left and he went upstream. What he found is that there was a dead cow at the tributary to the river downstream. And once you remove that dead cow from the tributary, the water downstream was purified and clean. Too many times we're trying to clean up something that is toxic, when in reality we should be going upstream and figure out what is causing the problem in the first place. And so the African genius of how we operate as a people is that going upstream. We don't have to spend time trying to clean up our political system. The issue is we move upstream and deal with what they're dealing with that's driving the entire system. It has been Black folk and their genius. If we understand agriculture, we understand agribusiness, if we understand everything, cult and tantalite, we understand all of those things about the Congo and lithium and so forth and so on in Zimbabwe, we understand what is upstream. Our problem is that we're not going upstream to figure out how to make the connections upstream to be able to control things downstream. We spend a lot of time downstream in this putrefied, contaminated water trying to make something happen. The reality is that people, we are tied to those that have always done great and wonderful things. If the earth produces a metal called coltan or tantalite, that is the highest conductive metal known to man, and the people that walk that earth in the Congo, when the bodies go, it goes into the earth. That means that the people walking the earth have to be the most highly conductive metal known to man. And if we are tied to those people, that means that there's something about us that's also special. So we must always attune to that. We're not given to, and this is where I'll turn over to Coach, we must not get into being in despair, but we have to always move, stay active, stay engaged, because that despair can lead to a sedentary lifestyle, which leads to early death. Racism is the number one killer of people of African descent. And it comes through high cortisol levels, coronary heart disease. It comes from high cholesterol, it comes from all of those things. But if you don't move, and this stuff can slow you down and clog you up and stop you from moving and paralyze you. Don't stop and look at it. Don't turn salty like Lot's wife. Move, keep moving forward, exercise, engage, and then also begin to see opportunities where people have only seen despair. And so that is the thing is, I always know that we've always found opportunities. Harriet Tubman found opportunities. Boukman found opportunities with the Haitian Revolution. We see this over and over again in history that there are people who found opportunities. Lewis Latimer, we can go on and on and on with Richard Allen and the AME Church. People saw something where others could only see despair. And Harriet Tubman said that she could have freed a lot more if they had only known that they were enslaved. So do not be one who falls victim to enslavement or despair. Be one who can always find hope in a hopeless situation. Thank you.
Dr. Washington is always on point about the mental, and he talked about movement, and our bodies can't, when it comes to anxiety and depression, it can't take up in the same space when our body is moving. And so, Coach, we often talk about resistance in terms of protests and policy, but there's also resistance in how we treat our bodies. Given everything that's happening from political unrest, we talk about this in the gym, to personal stress, Chauncey, how important is physical wellness in this moment? We're talking about in this moment. And what are small, realistic steps that people can take to take care of themselves?
First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Washington for that teaching right there. You make me want to go out and run 5 miles after everything. With all seriousness, Dr. Shields, you're absolutely right. I've spoken to you and I've told Dr. Kaye this. In this time, there are not many things that we can control, but we can control how we eat, what we eat, and our exercise, how we love our family and friends. And it's so important during this stressful time, Dr. Shields and Dr. Washington, to figure out how we're going to get that exercise in. Dr. Crenshaw said she's ready to fight. She's ready to do it. Melanie Campbell said rest is important. They are both equal. Being prepared for the fight, getting your rest, watching what you eat, how you love one another, coming together at this time, Dr. Shields, every day, taking a minute, taking a few seconds to relax, come down. The Chauncey, hold yourself tight, love yourself tight, take deep breaths, be in the moment, be present, but be ready for the fight. We have to take care of this temple. Dr. Washington was talking about the moving around and the way he travels. If we're not fit, if we're not able to fight the fight, if we're not able to regulate our blood pressure, if we're not able to move, it's going to be difficult to fight or even stay still. Stay still is not a good thing either, because when you're not moving, your heart's not moving. You're not feeling good. So I do believe that in this time, just little strategies, find a friend, find someone you can talk to, take the fight outside, go for a walk, do some breathing exercises. Dr. Shields, you always talk about meditation. Meditation is important too. Be still before you go out there to take that fight. Spend some time alone with yourself and your thoughts before you go out and fight.
You know what's so interesting what you just said, and I'm so glad that I was asked to, and I'm honored that I was asked to participate in this. Dr. Kaye knows, once the man got elected, my whole concept of what was taking place in the world sort of shifted. I sort of shut down, just like one of the panelists actually talked about, and I went into a different space. But why I thought that this conversation was so revolutionary, because quite often we go into spaces and there's a lot of dogma, there's a lot of conversation, but we don't talk about how do we take care of ourselves. And I was so glad that when Dr. Kaye wanted to bring on you, Coach Chauncey, wanted to bring on Dr. Washington, because we can talk politics all day. And Chauncey, you and I talk about those people that are out there fighting, those individuals who are out there on the pulpit, who are protesting. Many of them aren't taking care of their bodies. And so their bodies are shutting down. And so mentally, they're not taking care of themselves. So Dr. Washington, this is one last question, and we're going to bring Dr. Kaye back in shortly. Dr. Washington, in your work, you speak deeply to both personal healing and systemic change. How do you stay grounded while navigating systems that were never designed with our full humanity in mind?
So a powerful question. Staying grounded, first of all, recognizing the reality of the situation. when I examine the situation that I find myself in, I look at it from a historical standpoint and I recognize that the system was never designed for me to win in it. I have seen it. I've grown up in this process, and I recognize that there are these stumbling blocks that are there. But I've also recognized that inside of this, I've had people in my family. I've read historically individuals who've moved through these systems, and they've been able to do great and wonderful things because they knew who they were. And so when we see then the Lion King, it says, "Know who you are." We must know who we are, and that is very critical because the reason, if one does not know who they are, and Sun Tzu says it very clearly, that one who knows not himself and not his enemy is destined for defeat. If you know yourself, but not your enemy, you may have an equal chance of winning and losing. But if you know not yourself and your enemy, you will. If you know yourself and your enemy, you will win every single time. So the point is that when we know who we are and know who they are, then we can move with power, peace, and prosperity. One of the things that I do, Coach Chauncey, is that I engage in the process of comedic yoga daily, right? That is centering myself before engaging in activities. That is important to connect. Also engaging in my medical treatment, which is exercise, which deals with some resistance training, right? So that facilitates things. The music I listen to. I also use drumming, African drumming, in the context of healing. So I do that, but also I remain aware. I am a student of history, so I understand individuals like Dr. King when he says everybody can be great because everybody can serve, right? I understand individuals who engage in the process of know thyself. That's important. We must be informed. When 9/11 hit, they said, "Be prepared, not scared." We cannot move in fear, right? And the opposite of fear is faith. And people have this great faith, Dr. Shields, but they don't exercise that faith because the truth will make you free. The opposite of fear is faith, and yet people proclaim that but don't live that. And my faith leads me into a space where I am constantly in contact with the divine to create something that facilitates healing. That's where Ubuntu psychotherapy comes from. Ubuntu says, "Listen, let us look at how we can connect to be whole." And with Ubuntu, it's not simply about talk therapy, but it's about movement. It's about what you ingest within your body, Coach Chauncey. It's about understanding telomeres. It's about understanding all of those things that create a condition by which the body can destroy itself, how cancers can become created. It's about understanding how to move the neurotoxins out of the system so that one does not destroy oneself. And it's critical to recognize that a person who is aware that they are tied to other people, they will always be victorious. And I say it this way: the Zulu construct of Ubuntu, Gabantu says a person is a person because they're other people. When I recognize that I only exist on this platform right now because you all are here, that changes how I operate and move in the world. When we understand that we're always connected, there's nothing that we will do to dishonor and disrespect one another. But we never honor those who disavow us. We never honor those who want to dishonor us. And that's where we get stuck a lot of the time, trying to prove something to somebody who doesn't want to see our greatness. For some people, you will never run fast enough. You'll never dance well enough. You'll never jump high enough. But the thing that you can do is be the best version of yourself. And that comes through exercise, what you do, eat, what you think, how you function in the world, and recognize that you are, again, I'll say it very clearly and slowly, you are a seed of a seed of a seed of the seed, which means you cannot be destroyed because whatever's trying to destroy you did not create you in the first place.
Thank you, Kevin Washington. Coach Chauncey, as we come to a close, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for showing up. Tonight we honored this legacy of this, what we call the Magna Carta, not just a dusty piece of history, but as a living reminder that no one is above the law and that the fight for justice is a fight for all of us. I opened up, we honored the words of James Baldwin, who remind us that nothing can be changed until it's faced. And tonight we faced it, and we can only do it by bringing back the person that brought us all together, Dr. Kaye Whitehead. Thank you for your vision, your leadership, and your courage to keep creating spaces like this. And thank you to all the panelists for participating.
Thank you so much,
Dr.
Doctor.
Shields.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let me thank Dr. LaMarr Shields, and thank you, Dr. Kevin Washington. Thank you, Coach Chauncey Whitehead. I also want to take a minute and thank my team from the Carson Institute, Ricarda, Sarah, Gavin, Sam, and May. I want to thank Dr. Sheila Fleming, who is the former president of ASALH, for her work. I want to thank Loyola University for the platform that they made possible for us to host it. I want to thank ASALH. Sylvia Cyrus is our formidable executive director who's been holding up this work for over 20 years. I want to thank her and her team for the work. I also want to send out a special welcome to a couple of different groups. I want to thank all the members of ASALH, all of our ASALH officers who are on. I think I saw Vice President Aisha Hakel. I saw GC member Deirdre Foreman. There were so many others. Thank you. I saw Zebulon Molesky there. If I didn't see you, just charge my eyes, trying to look over quickly and not my heart. I want to thank also the members from the Today with Dr. Kaye Facebook 2 Live crew for coming. I appreciate you for that, and members of the Carson Institute. Our next convening, and just keep your eyes open, we're going to meet again on April 30th. April 30th is going to mark 100 days of the Trump administration. So we're going to come back on about 100 days later. Where are we? We're going to meet for Juneteenth, and then we're going to have an in-person convening in Atlanta in September. So it has been, for me, an honor and a privilege. And I leave you with this, in terms of how we go forward. We have to build both up and out. We have to find the connections and make them. And I urge you to join and stand with ASALH. As Dr. Fleming said, ASALH is a lighthouse. You don't even need a lighthouse until things get cloudy. Things are cloudy now. Things are rocky now. The lighthouse is there. Just look out beyond the shore. We're standing there. Join with ASALH. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve you in this way. I look forward to connecting with you again. Thank you, Jason from Event Services, for just hanging out with us and making sure everything is running well. Have a good evening, folks.